be made through to 19th of June. Okay, following that, from 20 of June to 10 of July is a commentary period. I think we all know the drill on that one. So please, any feedback to the Crown, and that'd be fantastic. It's really necessary for the whole thing to move forward. After that, sometime between 11th and 24th of July, the Crown will be considering all of the recommendations and commentary, and they'll be then making an announcement. Okay, so if we can roll on to the candidates introducing themselves. Okay.
Would anyone like to volunteer to go first?
I'll go.
Thanks, Lonnie.
Would you like me to stand up?
Whatever makes you feel comfortable.
I don't mind, like you. So my name's Juliana de Northwood. I've been involved in reenactment for nearly 25 years, and I've played in a heap of groups across both Australia and New Zealand. And right at the beginning, I needed to learn how to dance. So for a wedding, so I rocked up, and I have never moved, so I'm still here. Over the years, I have achieved the rank of Field Master within Field of Defence in the SCA, and I also was elevated to Master of Defence in November 2009, and I've also held the Field of Baronial officers in Central and Abuse of Rights, where now Kingirai and Rowany were being built. And I've also been a news officer here. I like to travel, and have recently just done some travelling just as the borders are open. In my mundane life, I'm a coach assistant trainer in New South Wales Health, and I'm also a diving instructor with this odd desire to become a better underwater diver.
Okay, so I could give you the full name, but it's going to bore people to death, so I just go by Ibn Jalal Society, my period name. I started up in just the box and moved down to Rowany, the place to work 22 years ago. So over the years, I've done a whole bunch of stuff. I came in through combat archery, of all things. And then fell in love with fencing after a while, and actually restarted off with the band. That basically meant that I kind of found the thing that was my jam, so I ended up getting involved and defence for that sort of stuff. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the SCA and the Baronial is the fact that it's given me this opportunity to pursue all of these interests that I love. And it's like you've got a perfect excuse to go down the rabbit hole and whatever takes you from it. It's one of the things I think is one of the strengths of the SCA and why I've been here for so long. And then mundanely I work for a bunch of companies, QA and affairs.
We might move down the line.
Hello, my name is in the SCA Sigval Desfatani. I am known generally as Siggy, which has the helpful two-faceted approach of both being a shortened name which Australians love and an entirely period shortened name which the Vikings like to do as well. Vikings and Australians, more similar than you might think. I joined through the SCA through St Ursula in 2011 and was immediately conscripted into becoming Captain of Archers under Ilona. Since then, I've held a range of college offices, including Treasurer, Secretary, and Seneschal College. From the Barony, I was Deputy Seneschal under Tarcher, Shurage for quite some time, and what was then Knight Marshal, now Heavy Marshal. And I was the Kingdom Shurage of Lockhart, which is the sort of first aid organisational position for several years, and I'm currently the Kingdom Rapier Marshal for Lockhart. My interest is sort of the typical SCA thing of everything's amazing, I can't find anything to sort of, there's this new shiny thing all the time. At the moment, I just taught a class yesterday in Politicopolis on sort of codes and ciphers in pre-16th century. 100 Years' War is very interesting. I'm doing a lot of rapier at the moment. But the real interest for me in the SCA is sort of, I love running events. I've run wars, Baronial Step Up. I've been involved in some capacity of Newcomers Feast pretty much everyone since I've joined, because that kind of helping everyone help each other and bringing everyone together is I find that really fulfilling. That's me.
Hi, I'm Ida Plant. Like Siggy, I joined the SCA through the College of St Ursula, would have been back in 2015. I will admit, my SCA resume not as great as everyone else's here. I much more prefer to be working on the back end of a lot of stuff. I've held a few offices within the college. I was Marshal and I was Reeve, but I've done a lot of help in various kitchens and helping set up and pack down for events, just sort of helping make sure that things are running smoothly wherever I can. It should be worth mentioning that we don't actually, at the moment, live in Rowany. We are based in Lit, but we are up in Sydney all the time. It's very easy for us to get to Rowany events. We regularly attend Rowany events. I'm sure many of you have seen us around. At the moment, my interests are carpet weaving and costuming, and I'm getting more into some of the other aspects of fibre craft at the moment, which I feel is going to be a very deep rabbit hole that I'm going to pull down.
Right, I'm Wolsey's Cloverhalf, and I've been at this for a long, long time. I did my first event in 1985. Yes, I met you shortly after. And I have been with Rowany all the time. Even if you were getting coup. I've been Marshal, Herald, I've been first principal of the Archer. We've got a lot of archers here, which is a good thing. And hope we can take on the Archer for the kingdom of Rock. No, the principality of Rock. I held no kingdom position. So went off into the background after that. I got the leaf of merit from the Kingdom of the West. I got my Baronhood from the Kingdom of the West. I got the first silver tier. There's no gold tier. Silver knock. I actually wrote the book for, or helped put together the fundamentals of archery. Shame to see that. Like to start again. Because we had a very good system of archers. There were a lot of us. More archers in the field than I was heavy. Which is quite actually true. And I thought, well, what's something else I can put up Baron? I've been Baron. Yes, I cook. I've done many feasts. I run a festival by myself. In the old days, we could do that. Well, that too helped us. Lord helped with the rubbish supplied. And someone else who remained nameless who did the water. That was the fire when we had our fire. And the mushrooms, I ate the mushrooms instead. But yeah, and answer your question, Peter.
Thanks, Wolfage, and thank you, everybody. I'm now going to open up questions from the floor for anyone who would like to ask any questions.
I was just wondering if there were any projects you were hoping to accomplish or cook while you're in the role.
That's sort of to everyone, or any directed specifically? Okay. I spoke first, so I guess the hat of the mic is mine. We've got. So we've been playing for the better part of a decade, and every year there's just another little thing that you can sort of come up with that is a project that we can help build the Barony, and not all of them you can do without that sort of organisational push. There's a few projects that we've each sort of got a couple individuals, so I'll say a couple, then Ida can say a couple. One thing that I want to do is introduce a sort of more formalised skill sharing and inter-baronial skill exchange thing. We had Politicopolis Uni where all four of us were here, and we had teachers from across the kingdom. We used to have in Ursula a way of bringing sort of peers from different groups into the college to teach a little class. I'd like to broaden that and expand that, and also have people from Rowany travelling, like Stradigoth Harrowstone does, down to other areas to strengthen the sort of, particularly in sort of New South Wales and ACT area, ties between those groups. We would like to do a bit more, and there's the Standard Standards project, which is something that we would like to push as well. A refresh of some of the regalia, so the baronial, so particularly the martial tabards at festival are really, really sticky. And that's something we'd like to expand to things like the belts for the guard, which are very, very well loved and have been very, very well loved for a while. The sort of tabard projects, and really bring back those kind of major works that we did, like the Hero Cloak at sort of Dens Park, and then projects that that everyone can participate in rather than just having one sort of person as a representative of the barony.
Yeah, so a few of the things that we've also talked about are things like encouraging, obviously continuing to encourage people to join the Baronial campsite at festival, which is continually growing. It was bigger this year than it has been in previous years. But one of the things that comes with that is that a lot of the infrastructure needs a bit more refreshing, particularly the Baronial Pavilion is a bit small. It was a tight fit this year, and if the Baronial campsite continues to grow, and with some of the other things that we're looking to do to continue to grow that group, we will need a bigger space. So looking into options to whether that's a bigger tent, maybe another tent, who knows? More research is obviously something that would be needed for that. One of the other things that we were talking about is using the Baronial Guard system as a way to increase engagement for people who are, kind of aging out of the college, looking for where to go, but maybe they're going to flounder a little bit. We can give them assistance with getting into touch with various officers or peers or people who have knowledge or areas that they would like to grow. I just feel like, we already have this very good system of getting people engaged a little bit, but we could sort of broaden that, expand that a little bit more.
A sort of a young leaders project, if you want to.
Yeah. So that's just a select few of the things that we've been talking about.
Save some more for the Stowe and the online sessions.
Juliana and Ibn
We sat down and looked at it, and one of the big things we realise right now as a barony, we've got a number of members whose whole experience of the SCA is through the online version. So we've got to help those people transition to being able to do stuff in person. That's something we need to look at in the improvement and retention side of it. The other side of it is traditionally the barony has relied almost exclusively on colleges for recruitment. And what we're finding is we've got a retention problem because they leave college and then we lose them. So they'll play for a couple of years, they're really great people, and then we lose them. And that retention aspect is one of the things that we think we want to be working on. Particularly as people get older, they start having families. And I know from experience from raising a kid in the SCA that the hardest part you have to get to an event is your child goes, I don't want to. So for us, making a space where people of all ages, be it from the kids at the age of 5 through to adults at 95, making possibilities for everybody instead of just for what's easy. And admittedly, that's not going to be an easy short-term thing, but I think that's going to be something long-term as a barony we're going to be looking at for retention. And how we can actually keep the people, because if we can keep the people, we're going to keep the knowledge in the group, we're not going to keep relearning. That's a big thing for us.
Sideways to that, there are a number of projects that previous Baron and Baronesses have started, and for some reason or another, they have either fallen by the wayside, they're too hard, the skill level has not been there, the time COVID hit. So an example would be the Baronial carpet. So the Baronial carpet got damaged a number of years ago, and at the time it was deemed irretrievable, designs were started, but nothing went past that. So I would like to look at some of those past projects that have not been completed, or ones that are yet to be completed and may go into the next investiture. So take some of those legacies and enable those into existence. I would also like to see, Siggy, Ida, Evangeline, myself went to Phillip University, and there were a lot of Rowanites there. Who knew anyone else was going? I certainly didn't. I was surprised to see so many. And it would have been nice from a perspective, I come from a dance background. And my dance background had people going to events as a group, sharing, maybe going to a hotel or booking something and going together as a group, sitting together, sharing the stories, but still enjoying the interaction with other groups. It's very lonely going to an event on your own, and I miss that camaraderie and feeling, and that's what I would also like to see is this is the cohesion of us as a Baronial.
Well, I'm going to think you all back. When I had the University of New South Wales group, no one registered, and they would they just appear in a bang, or they just slowly fade away. That's something we got to look into. They just lost interest. It's just gone. I don't know. They see more and more kids, because I've seen the third generation go to Rowany. Or rock up more, really. Not so much here. It's quite amazing. It's good to see the kids growing up, and you really getting a hold, and all the kids come to the stuff. And they're being taught well, and their parents are a credit to them. They're a credit to their parents. Yeah, I'm not a father myself, but I got tons of uncles, tons of nieces and nephews, and grandchildren. It's been in the family to be about 35 years. And grandpa just Uncle Wolfie. It's great fun. And I love it. And I got to start a restaurant in Sydney.
Okay. Did anybody else have a question? Kingido.
I'm Gwee, I'm the 6th Baron of Rowany, and I'm a peer of South Africa. It's well known that Rowany has several households in it. Do you, this is a question obviously for all of you separately, do you feel that households are a net positive or a net negative for the barony? And how do you feel is the best way as barony to deal with them? And quick example if you can.
Okay. Households are providing to the barony some of the things that we think the barony itself could be providing as well. And this came to our discussion about how to recruit and retain people. And what it actually is households are, they're your group of friends that actually help you stay. Okay, so that's the net advantage of the households. The net disadvantage is sometimes we have that pulling away, and if a couple of people in a household get disinterested, you lose the whole of the household. And we've seen that happen with a number of the older households where as they've gotten older, one or two people drop off, and then next thing you know, you're losing the rest of that household because their friends aren't turning up either. So we've got this, it's really good for helping keep people in and stay, but you've also got that side effect of you can actually lose people en masse the household as well. As a baronage, we want to also make that link. It's not just the household, it's also the barony are your friends, if that makes sense. That's kind of the only way I can really describe it, but it's getting more interaction between the whole of the barony instead of just the select group of friends you had. We see that as one of the things we probably need to look at for our retention side of the program.
Yes, when I came up, there were two households. It was Spawn and it was August. That was bad. Then they got Alpha coming in. Agreed to a lesser extent, you know, when you had a cake, I had a great influence on the performance of households. They took some pride in themselves. Spawn never did that. Never thought.
I'm coming at this as an import. I'm obviously not originally from Australia, if the accent didn't give it away. But when I came to Rowany, it was a barony of households. And as those households, as even Jalal said, they are a group of friends. And if you are not part of that group of friends, it is very hard to break into a household. They tend to be a little insular, and I have no problem with that. But finding your way when you have almost an encapsulated group is very, very difficult, and it's very, very lonely. Over the years, I've met people from all of the different households across pretty much every barony, canton and shire in the Kingdom of Lockhart, and I'm delighted to say that they are the strength of the baronies in some ways. As my solution to this is, if we were selected this, ladies in waiting would be a really great example of this. So ladies in waiting would not come from one group, they would need to come from multiples of groups so that everyone can interact and still feel like part of the barony, and not just picking from one area. They would need to come from everywhere. So that would be my solution to helping facilitate the friendship between the households as part of the whole of the barony. That's just my 2 cents.
Households are great. I see on the floor in front of me 3 combat peers who are or have close relations with Attica. JC, imminently another peer of Attica.
Congratulations on your promotion.
The household system, particularly in Rowany, households have waxed and waned. There has, over the time that I've been involved in the society, a very strong household presence in Rowany. And to me, they act a little bit like magnifying glasses, that it's not going to capture everyone in the barony, but it can let some people who are in those households grow and burn brighter because of that little ecosystem that they are in. More broadly, we were at Coronation a few weeks ago, and the shenanigans, the theatre that households can really bring to this game is really important. At Coronation, there was Badgers and Master Yevon in Ilgard's household, the Meerkats. There was some ongoing conflict, as there typically is. I've been to multiple wars where it has been, to a greater or lesser extent, you know, Attica and Rowany versus the world. And I don't think that has to be just Rowany versus the world. Attica and Rowany, or you know, St. Florian's and the Badgers, that these little groups can be used to build on our game at a local level, on the barony, on the kingdom. Yes, can be challenging to break into those kind of groups. Not every group has everyone as part of it. It can be challenging if you're not part of a formal household, and that is, to us, a major part of the role of the barony of Rowany and of the college, that you can be of Ursula, of Attica, of Rowany, and all 3 can feed off each other and reinforce each other. And just like a baronial group who may not be geographically close, or one that, you know, is this one or the college, you can't force people to participate, but when you have people such as the Atticans that we see here, who are reaching into the barony, and as Baron, I very much see, like, if Attica or another household in the barony wanted to have a project of their own, we are Baron and Baroness of all Rowany, and I would, for one, would be very excited to help them lean in to a household project just as much as I would for a college project or a baronial project.
Yeah, I think the thing that we want to make sure is that there's, you know, obviously we can see that there is such great strength in households, that we've seen households build people up and bring great strength and run events, and, you know, it is amazing to see. But we want to make sure that, you know, if you're worried that people in households leave and the households dissolve and we lose all those members, that they're, to minimise that there is the strength in the baronial connections. It's not just a household connection, that there is more cross contact and involvement, so that no one feels like, oh, I've only got friends in this household and they've all gone, I've got no one else, you know, so that there's another support network there. It's not just the households, but yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else with a question? Matilda.
You've all alluded to the college being an important part of barony, especially with recruitment. What would you, as baronage, do to support the college?
So one of the things that we've sort of talked about is acknowledging that obviously the college is sort of, it functions as its own little insular thing, and one of the things that we want to make sure is that as people exist within the college, that they are also existing as much as possible within the barony. Making things accessible for collegians, acknowledging that, you know, if you're a student or studying, it can be hard to afford to get to some of the events, especially if there's lots of events, you know, you can't afford to get to all of them. So potentially working on making it so that there's, you know, at newcomers, there's often a price difference for collegians, for newcomers. And so looking at potentially, if that's something we can integrate to more events, to make sure that people don't have to go, it would be great if I could go to that, but it's just a little bit out of my price range at the moment, making it a little bit more accessible. And supporting college events, making people aware of college events, attending college events, so that there's, again, engagement across the barony, not just within the college. And one of the things that we spoke about earlier about engaging people in the sort of baronial guard system, and making sure that so that the people who are in the college, who are bright minds in the college, that we don't want to see drift off or feel unmoored once they leave the college, that they've got good connections to help them stay engaged within the barony more broadly.
We've over the last few years, I mean, have been involved with and or run pretty much every newcomer event of the last decade. That's a really, really key project for Urshans to generally run, and it helps bring them in to more broadly the barony. So helping support collegians who want to run Ursuline Feast as another one, which is run intermittently, newcomers, providing the support that they need for those kind of projects, but as well as providing that support of, so you're interested in X, how do we bring you to that kind of focus group that you're interested in? The other thing that is key is there's a number of people who have suggested to me, more established people in Rowany, that events like Newcomers and Ursuline Feast don't feel like something that's theirs. They don't feel like they can attend because it's just for the Ursulines. And finding a way of having it so you have the full spectrum of the SCA able to attend all these events. Because then you have the Ursulines being able to make these connections and meet these people, whether it be formally through classes and tuition and training, or informally, just people sitting at table and engaging with them, that allows them to find a place to grow and transition through. And running those kind of events, that's not just financially, here's a discount, but also things like a lot of collegians don't have their own public transport, or don't have their own private transport rather. So hosting events that are accessible, not just financially, but also logistically, that we can get more of these people involved, not just in the short term, but going forward.
So we should have started with bank. We put everything into it. Our first test was the University of Halls, and that couldn't keep up with it. It's still going very well. As I New South Wales started with faded into obscurity. But it actually only faded into the start. We just never met any members. And it seemed a bit disappointment because they were nice people. They just weren't there.
Augustine, I think, so college, those who aren't aware, College of St. Augustine is the University of New South Wales branch. That would be sort of the gold star. If we can get that kind of backup, that would be really great to have the two colleges, because they did tend to feed off each other and grow. But
that would be a huge project.
That would be a very large project.
Just start a whole new college. Why not?
From scratch.
There's a lot of moving parts, something like that.
Ibn Jalal and Juliana.
For us, one of the things that we both come back to in the early days when we got involved in that sort of stuff, we used to travel as a group to events, and one of the things we used to do as a group would be do things like hire minibuses to get people to events. Now, we've got a whole lot of really local events, so things like Springwater up in Moretonvale, or Tokal, or the event that's coming up in Dubbo, and there's a whole bunch of other examples like this, or just getting down to something that's in Dora, even though they do tend to get theirs on the train line, which makes it a bit easier for a bunch of people. But rather than actually forcing the college students to go, I'm going to either have to get a lift off someone or that, because some of the things that the college students have got, there's also a whole lot of people in Sydney who don't have their own private transport, so they're reliant on public transport as well. So it's setting up and looking at, we're planning to go to this event as a group, we're looking at hiring a minibus, how many people would be interested, and making that service available to college students. Because these are the sorts of things, as a barony, we can float the initial costs and get the people who are actually partaking of it to pay their share to cover costs.
Over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem with that. Again, that comes from the dance club background, where I couldn't afford to go one time, so the club floated me and I just paid off in instalments. And yeah, I was a poor student, so and that also gives that sense of camaraderie. You've got maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 older members who can no longer drive and would like to take the bus, or they could drive, but don't want to take their own cars because parking's a pain or the cost of petrol, so spreading that over. And then even the younger students or the collegians, they may be able to drive but don't have, so they could do their part in driving partway to an event as part of their cost of their event or their membership, with the minivan hire, that's it. So yeah, there's a whole host of ideas that could be floated out there, and ways of engaging them, mixing up people from different households, different groups, and just forming that sense of community again.
Yep. Anna, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, so this process is obviously happening now for the second time. Why didn't you run for the first time?
Start that. The last time I was rehabbing from hip surgery and I'm through that.
Nice. I changed jobs in between the last round and this round, which gives me huge more flexibility. I simply couldn't have done this job if in my previous occupation.
And I just thought I'd put something back that I hadn't done, and I enjoyed it. And it's my big fan, it's my other big family, and yeah, that's it.
Okay. I love short and sweet answers.
So, sorry if that's been already asked, but what is your priority? Because we've had now a lot of people ask questions about that they care a lot about. But what is your priority as B&Bs or Bs?
Do you want to go first this time?
Well, I was the first Prince Valley Archer in Australia, and when I was first, I said when I let it go, I did the wrong thing. But I seen it change drastically. Adding a alpha I'll do secure on this. Yes. And I said arrows were different. We didn't wear near the armour. It was already light. And there was actually one thing where they were going to put tennis ball shoes as arrows, and we gave together all the archers of Rockhart, and they filled a tent. There was a lot of us there. The king went outside. He said, I didn't want to interfere with the talk. And he looked at it and said, I wouldn't have. And that was it. They said, we were about to withdraw all the archers. Do what you want. But I enjoyed it. It was good archers. We got good archers then. Rowany was a fantastic archer. They often fought with her. And then we just hammer away. But it's not as interesting now. All the armour they have on it, it's just not right. But
you won't start any arguments with that yet.
But I enjoyed it. I just gave two, 3 dozen arrows, I think. Standing on the hill under there, so there's just two lights down the bottom, Brucey and another one, and Bertha wouldn't run up. So I drew real back there and I snapped. Got my string. And I just assumed it. So we did not like that. We did not like that. Or meeting each other in the field and just deciding we couldn't decide who's got to do first. So we'll just go with it. But yeah, it's changed. We had so many archers on the field. Yeah, it could have been 100 at some stage. The heaviest were half that number.
So just to bring it back to the question.
Going back, yes.
If you were to become Baron, what would be your priorities? What would be the first things that you would want to be seeing implemented?
Yeah, again.
So if you were to become Baron, what would you like to see implemented first? Or what projects would you put in force?
Revise the entire thing, as I say.
Okay.
Well, I didn't do it all myself. It's a lot of thought.
Okay.
I mean, the heavies had their own thing. We sent back several things to the west, saying this doesn't do our requirements.
Yeah.
The orange triangles for sure. I just went to the top and said, we don't like this. And they said, right, you want to do the works, do it. Right, that's it, simple.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we actually had a line marshal. That was I resented. When I put my thing there, that my speech doesn't catch up to it.
Fair enough. Okay. We might just move on to the answers from some of the other candidates as well. So, Evangelia and Juliana, would you like to go next?
Oh yeah, it's fun.
Our priority would be getting, actually getting some smaller ones.
It is good.
Getting going.
So can you say that again?
I said our priority would actually be getting some smaller events when we get going. One of the things that small events are really good for is actually helping to train people how to run events. So they're actually a really good environment for pulling in people that have no experience to work with a couple of people who have experience to get that sort of understanding of how it works. And because it's a small event, the pressure is off. It also means we don't have to do very complicated things. So, like the Fully Journey model that we just came from is actually really just a small event that runs over 2 weeks. It's just a whole lot of, over 2 days, 2 weeks, yeah. It was basically just an event over a weekend with a whole bunch of classes and people doing a whole lot of really, really interesting stuff and getting a chance to play with stuff that don't normally do. So small events at that sort of scale, where it's actually just a very low key, let's just sit down and meal at the end of the day, is a really good way of actually trying to get people back to this, let's get back together and doing things as a group versus trying to do everything online, which has been forced on us for the last 2.5 years.
So similarly, I really want to sort of focus on moving people back into being face to face. Obviously, not everyone's going to be comfortable with that, and working on potentially integrating some way of having things face to face, but also online for people who can't, for whatever reason, be face to face or feel comfortable. But moving out of that online only space, I think that's, for logical reasons, a really big priority, sort of in the first instance. And so something like you said, smaller events, encouraging participation in a lot of the more regular events, so dance park and fire practice and things like that. Just making people aware that those are happening, that there's a space where they can come and do things, and that, you know, we can sort of start moving things back to normal as much as we can, but still allowing for some online events. You know, there's no reason to completely ditch the online way of doing things because it works for a lot of people. It allows a lot more flexibility. But being able to sort of help people move forwards, you know, in this new way of doing things that's going to be ongoing.
The sort of online digital spaces can be really important. Mateus and I recently attended a online 2-hour roundtable discussion on warfighting in Atlantia. And when we talk about, you know, cross-pollination of ideas between groups, that's pretty much one of the big ones. The two things in particular, which I think really need that sort of transition from online COVID space to back in practical person is dance park, as has been mentioned. One of the things that we've been speaking with Catherine, our Baronial NS officer, the Baronial NS officer, about is clarifying, really working out. There used to be sort of potluck lunches and trying to make a day of it. How that works in this sort of new COVID world, and also having spoken with some of the I know there's going to be a Stowe focused discussion, but what we've had spoken with some of the Stowe people about already is that there are a lot of people who are waiting for it to come back to how it absolutely was. And there is that sort of challenge of like, we can't just teleport to now we are fully on 100% of the time. It's slowly, gradually build it so there's just, you know, a couple more people every time until we can get back up to those kind of full-fledged new normal.
But I think if we can sort of help lead the way in engagement, maybe helping people realise that these events are happening, they're on, there's space for them, you know, be here, we'll be there, those sorts of things. We'd like to sort of lead the way in making that happen.
And just sort of on that, at that point, shameless plug, on the 11th there's Dance Park the 11th of June is Dance Park.
11th of June is Tavernalia.
11th of June is Tavernalia, which is a stow event, which everyone should come to. The website says that booking is closed on the 28th.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's the confusion. It's the day after.
So Stow Tavernalia is looking like a great event. It doesn't have a lot of people attending yet, and then Dance Park is the day after. Similarly, we'll be at both. So strongly encourage everyone to attend those two events and ongoing.
Awesome. Another question from the floor. Hello.
What do you think Baronial does well? Talk about all these things we want to change or improve, but what do we currently do well?
Look around you. You're sitting in the bubble. We come together when times require, and we do things together, regardless of where we're from. Support structure is important. People are struggling, they need assistance, they reach out, someone will be there to take their hand, help them, guide them, take groceries if you're stuck down with COVID. Recently another member brought $300 worth of groceries to my house, and then I paid it back after she paid the bill. So, it's things like that that we do really well.
There's also a whole lot of structures that we actually have, so things like, when we look at it, Rowany is a powerhouse when it comes to armed combat. Rowany is a powerhouse when it comes to fencing. Rowany is a powerhouse when it comes to ANS costuming. We have all of these amazing skills in the Barony that if people actually want to tap into that, they can fly and go and far and as well as they could possibly could. That I don't think you would get that advantage in most of the other groups in Lockhart. I can only really think of two other groups that have maybe got that diversity that this Barony has.
Sigvald and Nita?
I think one of the things that I'd like to make clear is that I think there's a lot of things that Rowany does really well, and a lot of the things that we've touched on is not that we think that, it must be changed, it's not working or things like that. A lot of them it could maybe just be improved, more efficient, things like that. I think that, Rowany is great at making a lot of things happen, at getting people involved, at being engaged with things, putting on events, turning up. But, it's just things that, there's confusion at the moment because how do things work now? And how do we engage people in this new world? But Rowany does a lot of things really strongly, and I think that that's because there are strong ties within the Barony and outside of the Barony. We all have our networks that we can call on when we need something, or something has to happen.
It's culture is the thing for me. That everyone here is Rowany is really strongly tied together. My first Cold War, I rocked up. I was a poor innocent collegian. I didn't know what was going on. I had no sleeping equipment and no warm weather clothes. Mendoza literally took the jacket off his back and gave it to me for that weekend, and I now have that. And that just, there was no hesitation. That kind of instant, one of the people in the Barony is in trouble and needs something. I can help, so I will help. And I see that every time we have, events and someone just runs to help, setting up a tent, carrying something from a car. We have people, we need, even something simple as we need servers at a feast, and there is always people turned away because we have too many volunteers. And that kind of selfless culture is, I think, the strongest thing about our Barony.
Yeah, I like the experience. I like the cookie, like we always quite enjoyable. Yeah. We had one, but impromptu one. At the end of a vessel one day, they just said, "Oh, just bring it to your cart and we'll put it into a pot." You know that one? And it was, I don't know what it was by the end of it. It wasn't when it started. Yeah, it's great fun. Too. I enjoy doing the cold war book every day. That's what it was. That's just what I went for. But I enjoy doing it.
I have another question. I promise this one's less spicy. If it's a little spicy, if you don't win, there are 3 candidates. Obviously, we can't have 3 sets of barons. What are your plans to continue fostering growth and positivity in the baronage? So one of the things that obviously we would be doing is we'd still be turning up at events. We'd still be trying to help out where we can. Obviously, we have a lot less sort of oomph behind our trying to get people involved in things, but you know, we'd still be trying to encourage people to turn up to events that are running, encouraging people if they've got ideas to run with those ideas and get something set up. You know, when we're at events, we try and get people involved. When we're at events, we help ourselves as much as possible. Those are all things that we continue to do. Those are things that we would strive to push.
It's kind of the simple answer is almost nothing will change because we're already trying to do so many things. We're coming to these events. We're trying to help where we can, and I don't see any reason to change for that to change, regardless of the result.
We've been down this process before, where we weren't successful. This time, a little bit different. This time we are both years of Rock Up, and we will just continue doing what we're doing, trying to help people do what they love, put them in touch with people that they may not be aware of, helping, tuning up, doing what we just generally do, making sure that everybody, including us, is having a good time doing what we all ultimately love, which is spending time with our friends and sometimes hitting people when they hit you back.
And this time around, we're not looking down the barrel of losing both our jobs.
Yeah,
Which is what happened last time.
That's exactly what happened last time. So
That puts a real dampener on things.
Oh yeah, it did.
quite literally, the week after we were advised last time, I was made redundant, and then the week after that, even Joelle was made redundant, and it was a thank goodness moment at that time. So at this time, no such luck.
Wilson? Sorry, we might just move on. Any other questions from the floor?
I guess this is like kind of going on a similar vibe about like what you think the Barony does really well. But what would you say personally would be your biggest strength if you were to become Baron or Baroness and do it? What do you think is the best part about you specifically getting the role?
Well, it was originally one person. One person who do it now, but there's a lot more support now. I've noticed. It was like, it was the way more. And when Baroness had a problem back in the late 80s, we took over actually. It was a coup. Frederick took away the I took away the.
Don't start giving me ideas, we'll sit you.
I took away the heraldry, and Luann took away being marshal, and we said like we got to back out again. Because we were reduced to about 6 members. You got the entire low. I don't know how we did it. I think about it. I don't know how we did it. But we got the honours back up. We got back where we were on our feet, and like the stay there. And they do a pretty good job now. They do it well, okay. There's one person who can run a festival, but you still have your bicycle. I mean, they told me that you can't do it. You can't do a team at that stage. There was no team. There's a lot more cohesion now than there used to be. Like everyone's right. Okay, if we do this, we get it. I went round to every campfire every night to see what they needed. And the right is, oh, they're going shopping, or you buy that, give me a bill, and I'll pay you back. And it's like, that was great fun. I enjoyed it. It's good. I took a break after that.
Evan, Joel, and Juliana.
Our biggest strength is our experience. We've been at this a long time. We've both held offices, and I've done offices from a local through to a society level. So we've got a very broad experience, but we've also got a very broad network of contacts, which actually really helps in this sort of role, because if you've got a large network of contacts with the role, it's much easier to help a whole lot more people. And we've also got that experience of building groups within the SCA. So I've been involved in building fencing groups, and I've been involved in building up a Middle Eastern centric online self-help group for a whole lot of people. Juliana's been involved with helping a whole bunch of fibre stuff get going, and we used to run a campsite at festival just specifically for people we know that are coming to festival and have no one to camp from the fencing community. So these are the sorts of things that we think are our strength. We've got that experience of just running and making space available so that we can do great activities.
Siggy and Ida.
On a personal level, I have been occasionally accused of having a balloon hand. Where there is something that either of us can do to help, that's where we lean in. I don't think you could tear that out of any part of our personality. Where we have the sort of, we've come up through the colleges. We have the more recent experiences with a range of groups across LOCAC, but it is, at its basic level is, what can we do to help? What can I, walking up to the steward, both of us just randomly go like, do you need anything? My hands are itchy. Let me lift and carry if there's nothing else. Is there, do you need, how can I help is so ingrained in both of our personality, even where we don't have necessarily a specialist skill, that enthusiasm and
We can lift, we can carry.
we
can push them off,
in,
whatever needs.
Let us begin. Like, what's next?
Scary.
Assuming that Rowany is a spherical social construct in a vacuum, and an explosion occurs that causes severe damage to it, what is your strategy for dealing with it?
Okay.
Assume the barony is a cow.
Spherical barony in a vacuum. Okay.
I don't think that's a question we can answer, because that's a very theoretical question of a group that, as I'm looking at it now, wouldn't explode like that. So I think that's actually quite an unfair question to be asking the candidates.
I have slightly different views. I think it's something that is very important. That there are black swan events all the time. We didn't think COVID was going to happen on a global level. At a local SCA level, we didn't think that a certain Super Duke incident would occur, and yet it did, and caused severe and significant damage to people across LOCAC and to LOCAC, financially and organisationally. These things do happen, and the way that I would personally sort of lean back on what we spoke about earlier with the culture and the people is the people there may have been an issue around the person. The people is how you solve that kind of problem. Building and strengthening those connections, it is very specific how you would deal with an explosion. The response is always going to be commensurate to the issues that cause that. but making sure the people are safe, the people are still joining in this community, people are still safe. Safe is probably a word. Like, an organisational system can suffer, but people never should. And if you have the strength in the people and the strength in the community, you can come back from pretty much any catastrophic explosion to your spherical barony.
Oh, he did one day. My personality, he had people going down with good release. You know, I went to hospital. Back then, I can't do it. It's quite a few people who were very sick that day. That weekend, but not enough to bring it down. But it's a good amount. And then a fire. Now the temperature. People eating mushrooms, you should have known better. Because they're glowing in the dark. Saw somebody walking out of the room with a glowing bag. I thought, what they are? And I found out. But everything worked out. We can handle it. We got enough people in the right way. Really good surgeons. They knew what they were doing. Now we have the ambulance people in, and they're a good move. But we can do it.
Ariston, I thought I saw your hand start to shoot up.
One piece of advice that I've heard from people who have done the job is that it can be, in some ways, isolating. What are you going to miss, and how are you going to keep your joy in the game up in those times when you have jobs to do, you might not get to play all weekends the way you like to play, there's internal reports. Internal reports sound good. How are you going to keep your fun alive so that you can share it with others?
Yeah, that's it. And they're good players. There's a wonder. I found this as easy. I didn't have a break for a while. They came back, I've been back. I'm very much background these days. They do a jolly lot of going into a beast and say, walk with this, what's the problem? You do something like adding a teaspoon of salt or something. You're told by some you can't put too much of this in there. It's not going to kill anyone. And that was great fun. It was lovely.
Sigvald, Anita?
So one of the things that I personally enjoy is setting up a project and setting up the sort of system and then watching it, winding it up and watching it run. I don't need to be on the field to appreciate a good game. Where if I have had a part, hopefully, if I'm doing my job right, in making sure that everyone who's in front of us is already having fun, is the system is working, the barony is growing, coffers are overflowing, wars are fought against other baronies and one, and so on and so forth. And I don't need to be holding the pen or the sword to step back and go, if I have done my job right, I help with that.
I think one of the things that I would miss if we got this job is at feasts, sitting around on the tables in amongst everyone, in amongst all of our friends, people we know, people we don't know, chatting. I think I would miss that, but I think that we would be looking for ways to engage still with those people, walking around, chatting with people, getting people's thoughts and opinions on things, just making sure that we're making time to engage with people, with the things that we enjoy, whether that's when we're at events or, at home doing the projects that we like and things like that. I think it's that making time to fit in the things. And obviously there's not always going to be time when you want it, but when there is, taking it.
I'm not sure what your listeners actually, because I've never had everyone else is having a great time, that makes me happy. And if I've had a hand in a component of that, even better. So it's like I don't need to drink to get a kick out of, you know, other people. They're all having fun. I have fun if other people are having fun myself.
To be honest, I'm going to miss the anonymity. Okay, I might be a double peer already, but it's like I still go to events and there's a lot of people that don't know me. So there's a lot of people that still don't know me, but it's like, as Baron of Rowany, everyone will know my name. So there's going to be no hiding, and that's probably the one thing I'll be able to miss is that anonymity, where I can actually engage with people without them actually realising who I am before they get terrified. Oh my God, you're all bald.
That's the one when the kid come up and says, "You're Wolfsage," and he says, "Yes," he says, "Wow." I know why. You live for that.
But that really is. It's one of the fun things I find is being able to interact with a whole lot of people when they don't really realise who they're talking to, and then watching their faces when you realise who's talking to. But yeah, that's probably the main thing I'll miss is the anonymity.
Matilda.
I'm gonna do the other side of Pip's question, which is, what makes you bad for this job? What are your weaknesses?
Love your phrasing.
I think we've got a fairly obvious one, in that we don't live in Rowany, despite the fact that we are coming up all the time, you know, every other weekend. I have family in Sydney. It's really easy for us, but the fact of the matter is that we're 3 hours away. If there's, you know, something that needs to happen here, it's harder for us to get here. It is harder. I say it's easy, like it is easy for us to get here, but it's harder than if you lived in Sydney, if you lived in Rowany. I think that delay, the extra effort, like I think that's.
It'll be a challenge.
I think it would be a challenge, but it's, you know, we are up all the time, and I think that there's, you know, we are engaged. We want to be more engaged, and I think that sort of counterbalances. You know, I think that would be the biggest thing that is against us in this role.
The biggest hurdle, but it's not insurmountable.
Ibn Jalal and Juliana.
Delegation of
In some respects, I think our biggest problem is that people do actually know it. So they know our good parts, they also know our bad parts, and they know that sometimes we've got short fuses, and that we have short memories, and that I am horrible with names, and I will remember no one after that. And we've both been sick with COVID, so we are both still suffering a little bit of long-term effects from that. So there are just some things we can't do physically right now. So I think that's the hardest thing we've got moving forward. But we don't see a lot of that as a major impact.
No, I wish I could be healthier. I'm not. When they get given me his time, I've got plenty of time. They say, they're not going to get better. They're not going to get worse either. I had my me days. They're over. I can do it, I'll do it.
Nope. I had someone looking at me expectantly. Gomez. Thank you, Gomez.
It might be an odd question coming from me, but one of the things baronies do is they go to war. How are you going to handle that?
So, we recognise that at this point, if you freeze time now, none of the candidates on the stage that I'm aware of are active heavy fighters.
I have been.
You have been. I have
I've been
been.
all
I
over.
have half a kit that has been in the stages of reconstruction for longer than I would care to admit. Physically, war is really important. It's a really big part of that theatre, and that is something that I would be very much wanting to get back into. It is not necessarily the part of the society that is my first pick for an activity, but it's something that is important, and as a baron, as a territorial baron, it's important to represent a barony on the field. Politically, I love the theatre, we love the scheming. There is a immediate hook that we personally have for a potential war, living already as we're doing with the metropolis.
First Rowany, then Polit, then the world. Too much responsibility says.
Other way around. So,
Too much responsibility says the Orlok, the whole world.
War is so fun, so important. Spring War, Cold War, Festival, Fencing War as part of those activities, and every plot and scheme, whether it just be, we've got this many fighters from the royal household and this many fighters from Ursula. Let's watch Ursula crush the royal household over and over again in Spring War, or whether it has a heavy thematic and narrative element. Harris not appreciating that. That's something that I'm really excited to work with other baronies and the crown to try and work in that sort of story theatre that is not just people sitting on a chair with a pointy hat. It's what are we actually doing to forward Lockhart as a story and event.
Physically, I am a native sword guide and armored combat. My own competitions that I'm on attending do not report that. However, I'm sitting here looking around and I see no less than 7 very, very, very capable generals among you. And a pair of inside agents.
All I can say is we're archers for the
Archers do. So I can delegate, and I am all for the theatre and the scheming and fun. And knowing this is one of my weaknesses, is the inability to take a real field. However, that's why there is an entire army to do the bidding.
The flip side of that too is wars don't run all day, they run as battles. And there are other points where the guys, all the time, are going to need lawyers. They're going to need assessments, they're going to need reviving, they're going to need help to keep going. And that's one place where we can stand there and support our army and make sure that they have the water, and we can be soccer mums with the oranges. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can do to support them. It's just we won't necessarily be doing it from the front in the armour.
I'm using high ranges.
Mate.
So that question then brings up the thing, fighting versus ANS. So if the war was declared, you all went, well, it has to be heavy fighting. What about, there's so much different stuff for ANS that gets ignored, because at demos, it's the fighters. It's fight, 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 fight. And very recently, we've had more of the ANS come, but there's never been the push, for instance, at demos to have dancers there. And there are a stack load of dancers in the barrack. There are a stack load of artists, and Colin down there has been bringing all these weaving to a lot of the stuff recently. So, fighting versus ANS. Where do you guys stand?
Okay, this is an easy one to answer. We pitch ourselves as a medieval society, right? We're not. We really aren't a medieval reenactment society. We're a skills training group. Okay? The medieval framework is where we actually go, okay, we've got the leather working, the metal, the armoury, we've got the costuming, we've got the sewing, the embroidery, all the brewing, everything that we do is about training the skills. Okay? We don't ever lean into that. And this is what we were talking about. If we want to bring in families, we've got to bring in the whole family. This is why we've got to start leaning into the strengths of the ANS. This is why we've got to start leaning into the strengths of dance. Dance is probably one of the best ways to bring. I got told it was the easiest way to bring a college group together because you can teach them and they don't actually have to have anything except music. So it is one of the things that we can certainly lean into, and it can become a really, really good, not just a recruiting tool, it can be a retention tool. Because people will find rabbit holes in this game, and they will fall down those rabbit holes. Because the high-level people, all I know here, none of us are actually a single thing. You know, I'm not just a fencer. Ariston's not just a heavy, he also has his Greek thing. Whatever it is. But you get, and it's like, and then, you know, you look at a whole lot of people who have been doing this for a while, they're not just one thing. There is a whole lot of group skills that they learn in the society, and that is one of our strengths, and ANS is actually one of our strengths as a barony. So it's like, we should definitely be leaning into it, particularly for demos.
And even with that maybe the war thing, so yes, I have done the ANS at war, and yes, I did actually single-handedly win the war points for Rowany at a border war. Yes! So no, ANS is part of war, but yes, you're right, it is a very small part of war, and it does need to be facilitated into a bigger part of war, and I'd really like to talk to you about that.
From my perspective, when I joined the Barony, when I started getting involved, ANS was a really huge thing. Like obviously there is the weekly fighter practice and not so much weekly ANS classes except for at the college, but I never saw it as something that was lesser or hidden or something like that. I'm very interested by the concept of having dancers at demos. Dancers, musicians, I think, yes, I personally, as someone who's not either a musician or a medieval dancer, can't quite figure out the logistics, but if there are people who want to do that, I absolutely, there should be that support of this is something that is happening that, we're proud of, it should be shown, I'm definitely on the ANS side of things, far more than the combat side of things, and I think I always will be. But I think, these are both things that are very important in the barony and in the society, and they should both be. I've certainly never seen either one as, lesser, not in my engagement, at least.
And when it comes to ANS at war, war points involving ANS at the events where I have seen them attempted are typically overwhelmingly won by a local group. And as part of this role, when we spoke about earlier using the liaising as an ambassador with the other baronies and the other barons and baronesses, helping other groups bring their artisans to our events, so we can. It's not just going to be, Rowanites are exceptional, and there's a lot of us because of our proximity, but helping there be. I love the idea of war points for ANS at festival, and getting the other baronies, supporting them, perhaps with that sort of skill share thing that we were talking about earlier. More players can help that really thrive. There are just some challenges with Australia, which is very geographically diverse, which has been a challenge for bringing artisans from other groups to war.
Yep. Wolfsage, any thoughts on arts and
I've got
sciences for war?
I got arts and sciences. We believe that. I've got berries. We're in a middle of scabbard for a piece of all once, and I guess they got something. That doesn't tie over the war. And the great sword needed a scabbard, so but it was a sword. Yeah, still good.
Okay, as we have just crossed over the 80-minute mark, I'll have one more question, which is Aristotle.
This is a practical question. I'm just going to squires. Can we go to that corner? That corner. I'm going to go back to the corner. So one of the things that's part of your job is being able to actually communicate in the back of a large hall. And also a nice way of rounding this out is to mention something that someone else, that other candidates have suggested during this discussion, that you'd like to collaborate with, B, steal, that you like, pay each other a compliment, but such that we can hear you without you shouting.
Okay. Sigvald, I really did enjoy your class on the cryptography and the stenography yesterday. I would encourage everyone in this hall, when he gives this class again, to attend, for I learned much about coding and decoding of script within period yesterday. Thank you, Sigvald. It was a great joy to be locked in the back of that class.
Former Herald says resistance is useless. I actually sat here going, why are these pairs stealing our playbook? To be really friendly frank, they were saying the same sorts of things Julia, Anna and I have been saying ourselves. So I actually think it's good that we actually have a pair beside us that are thinking the same things, because it also means that we're both seeing the same sorts of things we want to work on.
No pressure, huh? One of the things that Juliana mentioned that I thought was a really good and interesting idea was the concept of having groups travel together to events that are more distant, so that it's not so intimidating, whether that's, hiring a little minivan, that was one of the suggestions, or just a little convoy of people, traveling together, borrowing each other's cars, that sort of thing, making it easier for groups to get to events so they don't feel so isolated, especially at the other end when they don't know anyone there.
Ibn Jalal and Juliana, I would like to thank you for being the peers of our society that not just are involved in the combat aspects, but your fibre crafts, your Moorish classes, that you are contributing in many different ways, and I hope you continue to do so. Baron Wolfsey, thank you for bringing your wealth of experience to the society and all you've done, and all hopefully you will continue to do.
Now I'm going to stand up. No, not that easy. Oh, there we are. Let's see. Family. That's what I meant. That's family.
Okay, Alpha was behind me, so I didn't see his hand up, so he's got one last one.
30 minutes, I didn't realise it was so long. Just for future guidance, that's why heralds are around. Get them to do the loud speaking, right? Blah.
Your pass.
All right. No, really simple question. when there's demos or like demos, I know it's different to going to Rowany Festival. Where are you going to be camping? And which stall are you going to attend? Yep. Go for it.
I'm going to start with this one because traditionally I have gone with the Staccato School of Defence because there were more than enough people on the SCA stall, but also the stuff that Staccato uses is half of it's mine, and I don't trust them. However, recently with the reintroduction of public shows, I have moved over to the SCA stall where they have needed support. I have demoed with Colin in the most amazing fashion, totally uncoordinated. We had a coordinated demo between the spinning and weaving. I personally do enjoy the time I spend with the SCA at public shows, and I was planning on doing more of it at Blacktown. Thanks, Eva.
Look forward to you there. September 2nd, 3rd. Yeah, anyway.
This Blacktown I can't, because I'm currently running the Staccato demo, so I'm actually on the holder with the turnover. But one of the reasons that I ended up agreeing to put my hand forward for this was I've been building Staccato because I'm one of their instructors for the last 11 years. It's now got to the point where they don't need me to run it anymore, so I can come back to where my first love is, which is doing stuff that's medieval focused, which is, for me at the moment, that's just the SCA. So it won't be for Blacktown, but the long-term goal is to, okay, here's the gear, Staccato, you know how to do this, now I don't have to hold your hands.
And festival?
Pardon?
So there's two parts, festival and demos. Were you camping at festival?
We've started camping with Rowany Baronial.
Oh, sweet.
So much fun.
And we have been for the last two festivals. The Guild of Defence campsite has basically not happened since about 2018 because the people we were supporting now have their own consoles. So they're now actually camping, like there'll be a big group of them at Pullet, or there'll be a big group of them with the Northern Reaches. So that support that we were providing isn't there anymore. So we're back to camping with Rowany Baronial. And we had so much fun this year.
Miss demos, love demos. Rowany, we've been to, Blacktowns. I love every time there's a little kid and you can walk up to them and this is for you. Before you lay on. We're camping with Rowany Baronial. We've done for several years. We're going to continue to do so. This is our group, regardless of the result.
We just happen to live in Pullet. Rowany is our home.
Well, I'll tell you just a little anecdote I know that FMB, he was sitting having a discussion with an 8-year-old girl on Eastern archery. He said her knowledge was astounding. He's also an expert on it. These days, the most intelligent discussion he's had in years. That's the kids. That also a good joke.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Right. To wrap us up for this evening, I'm going to throw back to Stig.
JC? Yeah, I did have a question, but as we have a mind reader in the crowd, I think it was in fact the same words, but it was an important question, and I was glad to hear the answers. I basically wanted to just wrap up. Thank everyone for the questions, for your patience, and particularly the candidates. Thank you. It's sometimes not an easy thing to do, to get up and get somewhat grilled, widely grilled. Yes, there'll be a couple more of these. There'll be an online one and a Stowe one in a form yet to be determined. Yeah, hopefully we won't have to cover all of that ground again in each of those. But yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, thanks everybody, and yeah, we've still got a bit of evening left, so let's use it constructively.